Welcome back, everybody, to what I believe episode 4 of Making Sense. Today is the Science Corner. We've got the doctor, the mad scientist, Evan Zhao, with us today. Evan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Evan is going to be a fantastic episode here because he's got a little bit of a unique background, and I'll let him, talk more about that in a second here. But today's episode, I want to make all about IP and sort of the importance of actually creating a product that sort of stands out amongst the noise, and the importance of that from a durability perspective and actually building a company. So Evan went to Princeton. I mean, the credential is that right? Yeah, Princeton.
Yep.
Like the credentials on this guy are nuts. I should have brought my lab coat. Evan, thank you for joining the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so give us real quick. I want to get I know your story obviously.
Mhm.
But I want you to kind of give everybody the backdrop because it's pretty cool. I mean, Evan did some pretty cool stuff. Had like a C-suite stint at a public company, I believe. So give us like the whole lowdown and then we'll dive a little bit into Ravella too. Because I want to
Yeah.
hear more about that as well. But give us like your sort of, 2-minute background.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Bills Mafia, go Bills.
Let's go Bills.
Um, it was very cold there. So I did undergrad at Caltech, which was in LA, very far away, very nice.
Nice.
And then afterwards, I was considering a lot of different things. I actually was considering like coaching professional video games for a little bit, like after
Oh,
college.
really?
Yeah, I got really into League of Legends, like too into
Okay.
League of Legends. Um,
That's like a bullish indicator now for founders,
yeah,
right? It's like what we
yeah.
hear like,
Yeah, it was nice. Like LA is where they hosted all the events, so you actually got to go and like you got to hang out and play with the professional players. And
nice.
2020, sorry, 2013, 2015 was like the peak of League of Legends. So it seemed like the right career choice at the time. But I got a PhD instead. I talked to my grandparents. My grandparents were like, "We'll disown you." So you know,
Yeah, yeah,
we went to go get the PhD. I went to Princeton in New Jersey, and I got a PhD in chemical engineering, which is pretty broad, but
yeah.
I focused on like drug manufacturing and drug engineering stuff. And then after that, I did a it's called a postdoc, but it's like a little science stint with like a famous dude at MIT. And then I started a company called Ravella. We sold that company to a public company now called Oddity. I was their chief science officer for a year and a half, and then I left to go full time on my current startup, Packaging. So really excited to dive into anything that is interesting.
Amazing. Yes. Okay. So starting at Ravella, tell us a little bit about what Ravella was, how you got started, how the journey was. We can spend a little bit of time on this one because I think it is super interesting, and I do want to talk a little bit about the acquisition as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's see. It was 2020. For a couple of years I thought I wanted to be a professor, and then 2020 hit, and the job market for academia was like dead, basically.
Okay.
And so, I was looking at different technology that we had invented to discover new antibiotics. And there was a new technology to use AI to enhance the screening capabilities of any lab and enable you to find new antibiotics. And so I looked at this and I talked to a bunch of my friends who had gone into finance. And so every guy, when they hit like 25 years old, they start like working out, especially if you're in finance. I'm sure you know, Drew. And so they were like, Evan, you got to like use the technology to like find a better creatine because this was like the up and coming of creatine.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
and
Yeah, yeah,
so I
sure.
was like, oh, cool. So I tried it out in the lab and the technology was really good. Like it was super good at finding new molecules and we found things that could help with muscle. And I went and I talked to my wife and I was like, honey, I want to start a business off this. And my wife was like, I don't know about like muscle building. Like she was like, I don't know if this is gonna be like a big thing, but you should look into
Okay.
beauty because and she pulled out like this little bottle of like make of a skin care thing and it was like
She's like, yeah, I spent
$300.
$100 on this.
Yeah,
Right.
it was a crazy thing, and, we had no money back then, so I was like, we should talk about our spending habits." But, y you know, it was crazy, like, she has a PhD in biology, and she was like, "Just
Okay.
look at the demand
She's a
for
really
these
smart
products."
couple.
Yeah, like, th every woman out there wants stuff that works, they want new things, and people are selling the same they're selling vitamin C, they're selling retinol, they're selling the same stuff for skincare over and over again. So that's why we started Ravella. We raised a little bit of money and we got started and, did the research, discovered something. We started in the kinda hair care space because we found
Okay.
out that, like, there was even less even though there was not that much in skincare, there was even less in kinda hair care, like hair growth, that area.
So what was the product like like a serum or like a
Yeah.
powder? Or, yeah, serum.
Yeah, so the product was just a serum, you, like, dripped it onto your scalp, and then you, like, rubbed it in, and the key was it contained a new molecule. So the molecule itself helped stimulate some of the cells underneath the hair follicle, and it helped them get into a healthier state.
So was it for like hair growth?
Yeah, yeah. We couldn't,
Okay.
we don't say that openly, but the clinical trial suggested it would help with that.
Okay. Okay. So and then you mentioned like you like clinical trials, right? So that comes into my question of like you said you raised some money.
Mhm.
How much money did you raise at the beginning to start this off? And like how much of that like had to go to designing a product essentially?
Yeah, so we our first round was $600,000,
Okay.
and, we put it all into R&D, so we were trying to, like,
All of it.
figure. Yeah, all of it, yeah. We needed
Okay.
to figure out how to, like, find a molecule that would do anything,
Yeah.
and, if you ask my co-founder, he'll say, like, we kind of got lucky. So we found a molecule that worked and that wasn't, like, the worst thing to put into a product because what people don't understand is, like, you can discover something, it can look great on paper. It could look like it's gonna do everything for you.
Right.
You try to put it into water and it, like, explodes, right? It, like,
Oh.
crashes out, it's, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
unstable, like, something happens there. And so, we got a little bit lucky that, like, it wasn't the worst thing to work with in the world, and we could actually put it into a product.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And, you know, so we put all that money in there. It was all the
And,
money.
like, where do you like, who do you so you raise 600 grand, it all goes to R&D, like, is that, like, because you're, like, capable? Is that, like, you renting out, like, a lab space and,
Yeah.
like, doing stuff? Is that literally it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, we, like, rented out a lab. We had, like, 2.5 scientists, like, working full time and, like, trying to figure it out. Um, yeah,
How long did it take to figure it out?
6 months. So it wasn't
Okay.
that bad. And,
Well, that seems pretty quick. Cause
yeah, yeah, it's much quicker than normal drug discovery. The AI enhancement actually does help quite a bit. And, as sort of you just gotta like, anything that we could do in parallel, we did in parallel. So if we could do, like, 5 experiments at the same time, we did it at the same time.
so is that then, like, before you start to figure out how to, like, productize? Cause like, I remember, my first ever brand was in, like, the supplement space, was, like,
Mhm,
hydration
mhm,
sachets, like, kinda before they were cool, but I wasn't smart enough to, like, get it to go anywhere. And I probably took a year of just like back and forth and like sort of cooperation like with the co-packer to get it into a commercial state.
mhm.
So I'm wondering, is it like 6 months just to like figure out anything and then an extra 12 months to figure out like how to actually productize it? Or like how long did you go from like idea to like commercialized?
Yeah, so after the first 6 months, we had, like, this molecule, and to be honest, like, the reason we raised our first couple of batches of money, people didn't know we were gonna launch a consumer brand. And so people invested in
Oh,
us because they were like, they could do science. So we decided 6 months in, like, we're gonna launch a brand because that's the real way you actually capture value. It's super hard to
yeah.
capture value if you don't talk to the customer. And, you know, after we decided to launch a brand, it took about 6 months to then launch the product, and we probably should have taken a year. The truth is, like, the
Yeah.
first iteration of the product was, like, there was a lot of stuff wrong with it.
Well, it see, shoulda. I don't know if should is like a word because this story ends pretty well. I think it's public information, right? Like, Oddity buys the company for, like, $80 million, something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of, there were a lot of steps along the way, but, you know, it was our first time doing consumer products. It's hard to imagine unless you've sold something, the number of steps that go between, like, discovering something and then actually trying to make it into a consumer
Yeah.
product. So, we just made all the mistakes that we could make, and then fortunately, like, enough good things happened to us that it worked out.
So, then okay, so Oddity, which, like, what year is this, I guess? They bought you said in 2023?
2023, yeah.
Okay, so they had, like, been public for a couple of years.
No, no, this was 2 months before they went public.
Oh, before they went public. Oh, I thought they
Yeah.
were 2021, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk like, how did that, like, come to be? Like, what was it
Yeah.
like? Was it, like, a rigorous M&A process? Or, like, were you guys, like, looking for a buyer? Or, like, talk about, like, a little bit how that came up.
Yeah, no, it was a pretty, like, genuine moment. So, this was do you remember late, like, 2022 when you were watching, like, the All In podcast and David Sachs and them were like, "It's over." Like, the US
Yeah.
economy is, like, it's not recovering from this. And so I saw that and I was like, "Well, I sell, like, a product, and if the customer, like, runs out of money, that's probably gonna be bad for me." And so I was trying to raise some money because I was like, "Oh, we have some decent."
Oh, you were gonna okay.
We were at, like, $1 million a month about a year in, right? It
That's
was
pretty good. I mean, y that's
it was
good.
solid. It did the hair space is a solid space.
Was it e-commerce?
Yeah, pure e-commerce. Um,
Wow.
and we just started doing Amazon. So Amazon was
Okay.
like 100K a month for us. Um, because I was very stubborn. I was like, "Yo, we're a luxury brand, like, we don't do Amazon." Um, which was a mistake. Again, all the mistakes that you can make, I made them. Um, but yeah, we were looking for funding because I was like, well, we had like $10 million in the bank, but I was like, well, if I'm going to launch new products and I'm like gonna tank some money on more
Yeah.
clinical trials and more patents, then I'll probably want like $30 million in the bank to make sure that we can survive any like real consumer downturn, especially as we scale into larger numbers.
Sure.
Um, and so we talked to a bunch of firms. One of the firms we talked to was El Catterton, and as we were talking to them, Michael, who is one of the people that runs El Catterton, was like, "You should talk to Iran, who runs Oddity, and they're one of our best investments. You would love talking to them."
Oh, that's so
And
interesting.
yeah, I mean, he basically told me like the way that you guys approach product development, you would love Oddity because they approach everything else. Like they both product
Mhm.
development, not from the like new molecule side, but like how they come up with new products, but also the marketing side. And I talked to Iran like twice, and the first thing he said to me was like, "Evan, like I don't hire anybody from beauty in this company." It was his first line. He was like, "I don't hire beauty people." And I
Just
was like,
scientist.
What do you mean?" No, he's like I think he used to do accounting. And
Oh.
so
Oh.
yeah, it's like, it's why and then he, like, acquired Il Makiage, was the first brand of Oddity, when it was, like, going through, like, bankruptcy. It was, like, not doing well, and he acquired it
Yeah.
and turned it around, and then he launched online in, like, 2019. And so that was the kind of origin story of Oddity, and, his entire company is basically these, like, ex-consulting or ex-banking kids, and they just, like, they go hard, and they, like,
Yeah.
took a step out, and it was an especially, like, cool moment for me because during the entire lifetime of Ravella, everybody was like, "Evan, like, you need to hire the beauty people. Like, go hire from, like, Unilever, go hire from, like, Estée Lauder. You need to find, like, people that know how to do this, that can sell into, like, Sephora. Otherwise, you're never gonna make it." And then I'm talking to someone who, like, is, like, destroying everybody else, right? I think their metrics
Yeah.
are, like, much better than every other beauty company. And he was like, "No, I don't do any of that." He was like, "I just hire, like, great people, and we figure it out.
Huh.
And we'll make mistakes." And yeah, I was like instantly, I was like, "This guy's, like, really cool, and, like, there's probably a lot we can learn from them," and so we had a couple of conversations, and we decided to, get a deal done, and then the actual process took a few months, but we were pretty.
Did they consider doing, like, a minority investment at any point? Like, just, like, funding the money that you were looking for, or are they more like M&A or bust?
I think, we considered it for a little bit, but he was like, "It's so much work to, like, make this thing work unless you're, like, completely part of the team," and I kind of agree with that. At that point also, I think I was also, like, not convinced that, like, potentially we should be doing the marketing side of things. Like, I didn't understand, like, what it looked like to be
Mm.
a part of, like, a giant marketing engine, and so I was also really interested in just seeing what that looked like, and so, it was a good opportunity for us to just go in and learn.
Yeah, and so it's $76 million, which I guess you were what, 3 years in
2 years in.
to that?
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
yeah.
Uh, did you have co-founders?
Yeah, I had 2 co-founders. Yeah.
Okay. Were they both scientists as well?
Yeah, yeah, so one of them was more on the computational side and one was more wet lab. Yeah.
Okay. So you said you had like $1 million a month, and $76 million. So like I guess this comes to my question sort of like around the IP stuff, right? Like I don't know that this was explicitly sort of defined like in your deal or not, but like what was your sense for like how much value this buyer was placing on like your actual IP versus like your actual, product versus your distribution versus your sales? What was like sort of the makeup there?
Yeah, I think probably 100% on IP. And just the fact that, like, the IP could lead to sales and we could translate it was pretty
Yeah.
important. So not just the IP, but also, like, how to make it into a product. The only data point I have is they closed the brand, like, immediately after acquisition. So, like,
Yeah,
they turned down, like, like, $15 million a year for free, and they probably scaled that really easily to, like, 100 mil a year. And they were just like, "No, like, we don't need to do this." So, I think they placed very little money on the actual brand equity side.
So, was it more that like, in, like, the DD phase, I guess, like,
Mm.
of doing the deal, was it more on, like, the actual technology and the methods, or was there, like, financial diligence or both, I guess?
There was both. So they cared that, like, we weren't, like, making up numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think it's an important point, like, so and this is
It's
really
always critical.
yeah, this is an interesting point too, which is, like, for founder-led companies like Oddity, where, like, the founder is the person, like, driving things, most founders like working with other founders. So they'll
Mhm.
really like people that have like been through it and like understand the process of like building a brand or like building a company. And so, I think there's definitely value in that like me and my team, like we knew how to run Facebook ads. Like we knew how to
Yeah.
run like all these different things. And so there was definitely some degree of like, hey, these guys get it. And then the other side was like, okay, they clearly they could figure out part of that, but then, is there legitimacy to the science? And that was the
So you're making me like so I always kind of took the stance like I don't think IP is like that important. Honestly,
Mhm,
like you're kind of changing my mind here as I learn like more about the story.
mhm.
But I do think like and you're like at like this is like you're a scientist. Like this is basically like a it's like a biotech company. So
Mhm.
it's almost like wrapped by
Yeah,
a consumer product. But like what's your general opinion on like the importance of IP and like building like a truly differentiated, not only differentiated, but also like a product like with a moat in consumer
yeah,
products? Because like my my 2 cents was always kind of like pretty much anybody can make anything
yeah,
what up to a certain point, and then, like, when you get into, like, real technology, like what you're talking about, I think there's obviously, like, talent there that's, like, required, but for your average consumer products, like,
mhm.
how would you think about IP if you were building something that was outside, like, the more sciencey, realm of what you do?
Yeah. So over the past 2 years, I've learned a lot about just consumer in general.
Yeah.
I think you're generally correct, right? I think
Okay.
in general, IP doesn't matter that much. And we've seen that. Like we've seen that the most successful brands of the last few years has been let's take some kind of consumer, most of them are in like wellness, right? So let's take
Yeah.
some kind of consumer trend, right? Whether it be you could think of like magnesium or like, something
Yeah.
that like creatine, something that people recognize and understand the word, and then find a new modality for it, right? So recently, a hot modality has been like gummies, right? That's been like
Yeah.
a thing. You can take like anything and put it in a gummy, and like usually those brands gonna do well. Another one's like coffee, right? Like there's people that like and protein has been one of the things. Like
Oh my
yeah,
god.
so there's like I know like 3 protein coffee brands that are doing like over 50 mil a year now. Like
Dude, there's a lot.
there's a
There's a
lot of
it's
them that are
crushing.
killing, right?
It's insane.
That's like the normal consumer brand, consumer brand playbook because you're relying on Meta and Google, right? And or like
Yeah.
TikTok. So we're actually relying on, and this is very recent, right? So the last like I think 4 or 5 years, Meta lost targeting capabilities. And so iOS 13, iOS 14, they lost the capability to like really fine tune who to advertise to. And so you're
April
only
26th, 2021. I
exactly
always
those
look
are the
the
glory
the
days, right?
the
You can
date
sell anything to
the
anyone.
date burned into my brain, yeah.
But it's different now. And so if you actually want to make a rapid scaling consumer goods company work, you have to get those channels working. And the only way to get those working is if people kind of understand what you're selling immediately, right?
Yeah.
Because you get like 3 seconds to scroll, right? And
Right, because it's, like, pretty, like, short consideration windows too, like, it's not like a big purchase that people are thinking about for a long time, it's like, "Oh, that looks tasty, I guess I'll I
exactly.
guess I'll try it."
And then
Yeah.
the other thing that happened is, people are like, oh, app loving and these other things. Most of those things, a lot of the clicks that you get are like accidental clicks. So
Yeah.
if you're trying to sell something and like people don't really know what it is, that's actually quite damaging to your pixels, right? So Meta then becomes worse at targeting people because you're sending random people to your website. And so the more broad appeal, the more people that like kind of know like protein or creatine or like magnesium, more people that know that stuff, the more conversions you're going to get and actual like better learning that you're going to get. And so it's kind of like a nice like pinwheel effect. You're going to get better results and therefore you can get better targeting, better results. So that's the normal consumer brand playbook. And the idea is you take that, you create a nice brand around it, and then you can probably bring in some kind of IP you can acquire, right? We saw David Barr, like they acquired,
Yeah, that was interesting, yeah.
right? That was interesting. Like now they're the only people that can really do that technology. And so that's interesting, right? That
Yeah.
that general playbook is what people do in consumer goods. You don't really need IP for any of that. In fact, I think wasting time on saying IP until unless you're using it as like a selling point, like, oh, like patent pending, like as
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, like it's a patent pending like magnesium thing. It's not like a real patent pending thing. But like, the actual IP part is not as important as figuring out like the zeitgeist of consumer, right? Figuring out like what consumers really want. When
Well,
you
that's yeah, so I that's always been my sort of stance. I think, like, what makes me wonder though, and like I think there's, like, something going on, and I was kinda talking to Wayne Wu from VMG in my last recording about this, is, like, what is going on with like some of these like gummy companies or like powders companies or like what like they are growing so quickly
Mm,
and they're making so much money. I mean, like anybody who says like D2C isn't a business model,
yeah,
just like hasn't seen some of these things, I
yeah,
think. And like that was me like 2 years ago. Like before I hopped the fence to come over to like the dark side of
yeah,
of being a vendor, like I was like, this sucks. Like I quit. I was like, I'm out of here. Like I'm not doing this
yeah,
anymore. And now I'm like, holy these people are absolutely printing money. And the only thing that I still wonder is like, does this actually last? Or like can somebody just make this and like ultimately like, these are fads. So like I guess I'd be curious, what you think in terms of like the long-term durability of like these gummies, for example. Like there's no doubt, like you said, you can spin it up and like get share pretty quickly.
yeah.
But like how do we think about like the future of some of these things?
Yeah, I mean, the in some ways it's a fad, right? So, like, I don't wanna say it's 0% fad. I don't wanna say, like,
Yeah.
there's not, like, a certain degree of, like, the consumer is just really interested in protein right now, right? Like, we believe in the concept of protein, right? Like, everything has protein in it, and that's great, and, like, if you start a protein company, like, 3 years ago, you are printing money. Like, it doesn't really matter, like, what you were doing,
Yeah.
you're, like, making money now. And so, there's a certain portion of it that's a fad. The thing is, though, fads usually last a few years. And so you have a few years where you're, like, guaranteed to be able to ride a wave and, like, figure out how to make some money. And
Right.
like you're saying, a lot of these gummy companies are actually making real money now. So that's the part where I'm like excited where like they're gonna get cash flow and they're gonna figure out like how do we then convert this into a mode. And then the other side of that is most of the people that have figured that out, that like are running these companies, these really good gummy companies, they're smart people. And usually smart people are a little bit anxious. And so my guess is all of them are like, how do I make sure that like if it is going to last a few years, how do I make sure long-term moat we can convert this into something awesome, right? Because,
Right.
your end state is to become something like AG1, where like you can just launch like a sleep supplement and people are like, oh, like this is like a pretty big sleep. I don't know how much money they're making with AGZ, but I'm guessing that it's going to be a significant portion of the revenue in a few years. And you're able
That I mean, they were what yeah, that them specifically, they they're crazy. I don't know what they were doing not going on Amazon and only I mean, they got the crazy scale, but yeah, go on.
yeah, no, and a lot of it's like other people's hesitancy is your opportunity. So like if AG1 didn't want to go Amazon, like a bunch of brands just printing money on Amazon, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's basically probably what like made Bloom,
Yeah.
like
They're massive, right? They're over 500 mil a year. Like they're massive as a company. And
yeah.
so and now they're expanding into like drinks, I think, right? Like ready to make drinks. Um,
Yeah, 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 like energy drinks.
it's smart. Because the people behind these companies, I think if they were talking to an investor, they might be like, "Oh no, like we have infinite moat." But if you ask them like deep down, they're all like, "Okay, so how do we turn this into something that's like sustainable?" And the truth is, like, you can start with IP, but IP doesn't guarantee you have a sustainable company. In fact, like very few people with IP actually end up with a sustainable company. But if you can make money, if you can actually get the scale and get name recognition for your brand, that's also a good moat. Like that moat
Mm.
itself, you can land expand into other
W
things.
That's like brand is the mo, yeah,
Yeah.
which is like, it's kinda funny because like, I remember, like, when I would raise money for Mad Rabbit, and it was like, the people are like, "What's the mo?" And it's like, "Well, this is already, like, the best, like, tattoo brand, like, by a mile," Like, this is, like, I think Mad Rabbit has, like, more followers on social media than, like, Sunbum, which is, like, probably
Wow.
50 times the size or
Yeah.
something. But I'm like, "No, the brand equity, like, is the mode,"
Mhm.
So but that was never, like, a very popular answer, you know what I mean?
I have a feeling it's going to be more and more popular of an answer these days because it's just hard to explain, right? Like, and I'll just
Hard to
I'll give
explain.
you a prediction, right? The and I there's no like scientific difference between any company that sells the gummies for like hair loss, but I've seen so many of these companies in the last year that I know there's going to be a prestige hair loss gummy company that becomes massive. Like I'm talking like probably 2 years over 50 mil, probably 3 years over like 150. Because there's going to be demand. Gummies are big. People are losing their hair for like multitude of different reasons, and like Nutrafol is big already. So Nutrafol is to
Unilever bought Nutrafol, yeah.
yeah, and they're massive. Like, but
Yeah.
if you think about like what all the work AG1 did and Bloom did for like Runes to give a lot of top of funnel awareness,
Yes.
Nutrafol and some of these other companies that sell like hair loss supplements is going to do for these hair loss gummy companies. And then the question is like which one of them is going to win? And I think it comes down to the one that can tell the better story and that has the better brand equity. Because the truth is there's also other greens gummies and Groons ended up winning because not only did they take advantage of the like top of the funnel awareness, but they're also like really good. Like they're really good at
Yeah, they actually are. Yeah.
so like yes, you can ride a fad, but you also have to be like top of your game in order to capture it in the right way.
And then you have to figure out like how to jump around on these
Mhm,
fads, right? Like,
mhm,
the same company, if you've been around for 10 years, like the same companies that are on the protein thing right now were on the keto thing 5
mhm,
years ago and the paleo thing before that or like whatever. So like I think honestly the one of the more difficult parts of like building the brand is like giving it the ability to jump around like
mhm,
that. And I think like Groons, just because we're using them as an example, I think the way that they've kind of diversified their brand already is actually smart
mhm.
because what did they just launch like some like immunity thing and like it
Yeah,
looks and like sounds and feels and tastes and smells like kind of different, right?
yeah. And,
And so like
like, who knows if there's gonna be, like, a good trend there, but the fact that they're taking the shots means I can probably guarantee you within the next 3 years, they'll be able to diversify, right? Like
right. And like if like let's just say like vitamin C is like the next big thing for whatever reason, like they're gonna be a public company.
yeah,
Like
exactly. You just need 2, right? You need to really prove that you can do it twice before going public, and, you know,
wait, say more about that. Say more about that.
I think I think if you have one major product hit, it's really hard to go public. It's really hard to get acquired even because people
Yeah.
are like, "This is a fad," right?
Mhm.
And so your multiples are not gonna be that good. And, generally, this is what I think, right? Is, if you have one thing and it's doing well, people are gonna discount it because you just got lucky a little bit. The
Mhm.
moment you get that second one and it's like picking up steam, that's when I think people start paying attention. And, that's what happened with Oddity. Like, Maquillage was crazy scaling. Like, by the time in public, it was like 500 mil a year. But people really started paying attention once Full of Child was at like 100 mil in its second year, right? So, like, that's when people start paying attention. Even for us, like, just the hair serum was doing $1 million a month. But our second product went from 0 to 200K a month in like the second month. And so
Really?
we were able to be like, hey, like, you could say the first one was luck, but the second one we were also able to scale, and that was
Yeah.
like in skincare, right? So you're able to tell a much better story, and you're able to get better multiples. You're able to get better people working with you that way.
And then it's just a matter of like how big is the market that these products are
Mhm.
in,
Yeah.
right? Like we had some really successful product launches off the bat, but like the number TAM it can be limited and that sort
Mhm.
of hurts it too. But okay, I like this as a topic is like
Mhm.
so like Once Upon a Farm
Mhm.
um filed for like an IPO.
Mhm.
They were mostly like a what it was the kids pouches are like 65% of their revenue.
Mhm.
It was like 95% a couple years ago.
Mhm.
So this is our first IPO
Yeah.
for like a consumer brand in like years, as far as I can remember,
Yeah.
and like a true consumer products brand.
Mhm.
Um, what are your thoughts as somebody who has sold a company for damn near nine figures, has like a very sophisticated understanding of the capital markets? I would say, like, how do you think about the future of like public markets, like as like a home for these brands because they've gotten absolutely wiped. And then I have a follow up question as it regards to Oddity, because they've actually done very very well
Mhm.
as a public stock.
Yeah. I think I saw from your report that they were still losing a little bit of money, right? They're
Yes.
overall negative.
Yes.
I think that's gonna be hard. Like, I think that on the public
Brutal. It's going to be
markets,
brutal.
it's gonna be pretty rough. Like, and I think overall, like, consumer has gotten it's really weird. Like, we've been just dumping money into AI, like, as a society, and consumer
Mhm.
goods has been very, like, focused on EBITDA, right? Or, like,
Yeah.
cash flow. And so, I think that they might not be the best representative for consumer goods, like, into this public market. I can't foresee them, like, doing really well, like, a year from now, but, anything can happen. I'm sure there's ways that they can turn around and, like, really start making money,
Yeah.
but
So, but like, so not even like them specifically, but
yeah,
I mean, I broadly agree with you. Just like you're a founder.
yeah.
You've already had like a pretty big win. Presumably, you think that the next win is going to be bigger. Like, is IPO like something that like you would even like consider working towards?
Yeah, I will just say being a public company, like, kinda sucks, and, I this might be a hot take, but, like, uh there's a lot of companies that went public, I think, like, 3 or 4 years before they should have, and I think it's actually really bad for the company. Fortunately, I think Oddity was not one of those. I think they went public at a time when they were already ready. They were making a lot of cash, but
Yeah.
it costs a bunch of money just to be public. And so
It's like
you're
$10 million a year.
it's a ton of money, and it's basically your entire C-suite's, like, time, right? So you are sinking a bunch of time from your C-suite away from actually changing the business and putting it towards, like, talking to Wall Street and, like, trying to convince them that, like, this, like, stupid little number that they're really, really fixated on is super important. And so,
Huh.
less about the money, but more about, like, your C-suite should be spending their time, like, moving the business forward, and if your business can't afford that, like, if in for example, like, there's a lot of public consumer companies now where they're losing money.
Yeah.
And instead of having the C-suite being like, "We're not gonna talk to investors for a year. We are going to, like, heads down, figure this out," which is what normal founders would do, their C-suite has to every quarter, like, prepare a story for how things are gonna get better. And that
It's more
takes
like I always say it's more like politics. Like I so my like real job was
Mhm.
equity research and I covered like public stock. Like I covered like Wayfair,
Mhm.
Carvana, Amazon. Like it was I was on like an e-commerce list, and so there's like Amazon, Google, Shopify, etc.
Yeah.
Like when you're a C, and actually, I mean, you're the perfect person to ask this. Like you were C-suite at a public company. I don't know how much sort of investor relations you were involved in, but like you're basically a politician. You're like not even like a business person. You're like just like trying to like say the right things and
Yeah.
craft the right narrative more than like what do you is that true or am I being dramatic?
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think every company sends, like there's probably, like, a group of 3 or 4 people in their organization they're gonna send to do this. Usually, like,
Yeah.
contains a CFO, right? It contains, like, sometimes a CEO, sometimes COO. But yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty damaging. If you're a company that's trying to turn things around and make yourself profitable and the markets are not treating you well, I think that's a pretty tough mindset to get out of. Because not only like are you wasting your time, but also your team is watching you waste your time. Like it's hard to go to your team and be like, we need to like buckle down. We're gonna like fire a bunch of people. We're gonna like, like really make sure spending is under control. And at the same time, like you're spending your time like having to get like shipped around to talk to all these Wall Street people. I think that's tough culturally to recover from. So
Yeah, I tend to think like because there's been so much money that have come into the private markets,
mm,
like the IPOs are so big now,
mm,
right? Like you used to like what Amazon or Google went public after
yeah,
raising like $30 million or something.
yeah,
Like the public market used to be like the series like C market.
yeah,
And so like the nature of like the scalability of the model of these consumer brands paired with the generally limited TAM for lots of them, like the IPO floor has just gone up so much.
yeah,
It is so hard to build a CPG or a consumer company that even like can get there, like
yeah,
let alone like succeed and scale from beyond there. Like what Shopify is up like 100x in the public
yeah,
markets or something, right? It's like how, like Nike, Coca-Cola, like, Unilever, like these companies, like they were made over hundreds of like years, like literally hundreds of years. And
yeah,
so like the idea that any CPG company like could succeed as a publicly traded equity, I think is like pretty crazy these
it's
days. I mean, obviously, of course, there will be unicorns, but like,
yeah,
like Olipop maybe, they could go
maybe.
public.
I have a hot take here. I think that if you're doing under, let's say, like $1 billion of revenue, and you're doing less than 10% EBITDA, or like around 10% EBITDA, you probably shouldn't go public. I mean, that's like a really dangerous place to be because
I don't even think that's a hot take. Yeah.
I don't know. I think you can just like you can just die like on the public markets. Uh, I tell my team, I'm like, listen, like this, we want to do this big. Like obviously, like I really want to run this company and make this company like as big as possible. But I tell my team like eventually we're gonna have to IPO because that's like what real companies do eventually.
Yeah.
But unless so our model is gonna be we're gonna launch brands, right? And we're gonna do R&D and we're gonna launch brands with them.
Yeah.
If we can't get 3 brands, each over like $300 million per year, there's no way we're IPOing. Because
Right. Yeah. It's literally.
like, I see what the analysts write about a company when they feel like they're not proven out yet. And there's like you have no rebuttal for it. It's like the most nitpicky stuff, like, oh, like, but they didn't prove out that they could like make a third brand, and like the second one was complete luck. And it's like, okay, like so the truth is like the bar is gonna get higher, and it's because all the tech companies and all their profitability from the tech companies is making like consumer goods look a little bit less attractive on the public markets.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's just really, really hard. And so I thought it was super interesting that Once Upon a Farm. I mean, I think there's like some stuff going on
Mhm.
behind the scenes there, which is sort of driving this decision making. Like I don't know that this is highly rooted in fundamentals, but I mean, at least we get to see. At least we'll get like a data point into like
Yeah.
how is this gonna go. I mean, it's filed. Like they're gonna do it. Unless it's like some ploy just to like get acquired, which it could be.
It could be. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff happening recently in the M&A market, so
You mentioned that being a publicly traded company kind of sucks.
Mhm.
I I want to hear more about your experience as like a leader at a publicly traded company. Like now that you're back in like the startup world, like
Yeah.
you strike me as like a kind of like a 0 to 1 guy, like tinkering in the lab kind of a
Mhm.
thing. I don't know if that's if you agree with that or not. But how was it like? Because I mean, this is like Oddity's a multi-billion-dollar
Mhm.
enterprise. How did you like being C-suite at a public company versus being in the founder seat?
Um, I will say, like, for a kind of bigger company now, Oddity moves really fast, and so there's a lot of startup DNA in the company. I did not like being being a like, a part of a publicly traded
I
company.
guess if you like the yeah, you'd be there. So
Yeah, I mean, just I'll just give, like, the most ridiculous example I can give, like, people were writing short reports on us, and it was, like, stuff that didn't make sense. Like, right, like, there was a person that wrote a short report on us that was like, "This company, all of the revenue is not from D2C, it's actually all from 20 retail stores in Israel." And I was like, "You think
what?
that this company makes $800 million a year, 20 retail stores in Israel? Are you serious?" Like, that was in the short report, right? And, like,
Stock go down when that came out?
it did. It
Like
did.
people believe that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
people believe that, and I was and then, like, like, I had to see, like, really, really great people waste their time and be like, "No, like, no, that like, it's literally physically impossible for small retail stores to do 30-40 million dollars a year of revenue." Like,
Oh my god.
that's just not how
Yeah. Like what?
yeah. So, there's stuff like that. That's like it's infuriating. Like I think if you're someone, especially if you're into startups like you are, right? If you're someone that like really doesn't like wasting time on stupid stuff, there's a lot of stupid stuff that comes with being a public company. And so that's what I didn't like about it. There was, like Oddity was great. And fortunately it's like one of the few companies doing well in the public markets right now,
Yeah.
consumer. And I had a lot of great things to say about the people there. But just like being a public company and having to think through, "Oh, what does Wall Street gonna think of us?" That's, like, not a fun thing to spend your time doing.
Yeah. Um, it's kind of funny though, because like I came from the sell side where everyone's a cheerleader,
Mhm.
like it's like 85% of like sell side ratings or buy or whatever. So um I always thought that was like kind of like a funny sort of inverse of that where it's
Yeah.
like nothing can go wrong, and it's
Yeah.
like the stock would be down like Carvana, would be down like 70% and we'd be like pounding the table and it's
That
like
would've been a good choice.
well at the time yeah, I guess you're right. Maybe that's a terrible example. It's literally the worst example I could have possibly
Yeah.
thought of. But like um here's another okay, so Oddity, one more thing I wanna sort of touch on here. So, this stock, I think, is up, like, 50% all time or 60% all time.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with Waldencast?
No, what is that?
So, Waldencast is it looks a lot like Oddity. They have
Mm.
it's a two-brand portfolio, publicly traded company. They own Milk Makeup and Obiagi
Yeah,
Skincare.
that's 2 good brands.
Oh, okay, yeah. So this is like they basically SPACed in 2021. They like acquire these brands
Mhm.
and went public. Um, there's a lot to it, but like my inclination is that like Oddity has done a really nice job of like sort of helping investors understand that like this is like a truly differentiated
Mhm.
company.
Mhm.
Like honestly, like when I remember when they went public and like I don't think I was on the sell side at that time, but like
Mhm.
everybody thought it was like I mean, and it is in many ways, but like the idea was like it was a tech company, you
Mhm.
know, and like some people didn't even like realize like they're selling like products.
Mhm.
And like it was like there was like some AI narrative to it. So I guess like on this thread of like being a public company and selling products, and then kind of tying it back to our whole thing about IP. Like I don't know that like Walden Cast, for example, has like a truly differentiated
Mhm.
approach. And maybe, and I've done like some research on the
Mhm.
company.
Mhm.
It's not obvious to me at least.
Yeah.
Um, So we're sort of talking about like how important is this in terms of like building like a truly like durable company.
Mhm.
Do you think Oddity has been succeeding because of their approach and because of their differentiation and because of their technology orientation, or just because they have better brands, or are those things not mutually exclusive? I suppose. Like, what do you think's driving them out their outperformance?
So there's a lot of tech people in the company. So people like at the company know how to code, right? Which is very
Yeah.
different than
Okay.
most consumer companies. Um, I think that when people talk about moats in this regard, I think the best moats that consumer good companies can have are just like you just have to be extremely good at certain parts and you have to double down at those things, right?
Yeah.
And you have to like really refine and be the best in the world at these things. Oddity has a lot of advantages going for it, but it's probably the best company in the world at doing like the quiz funnel. So like figuring out like if
Oh, really?
yeah, like if I have a and this is how like it's kind of counterintuitive, but when we were going public, all of the analysts were like, "So why aren't you going to retail?" Right? So like, what? Why aren't you
Yeah.
doing all these things? You have like a good brand, and they were like, "Well, like we have a lot of advantages online, and all the big companies aren't doing online well." And so that's one of the things is like, if AG1 is on Amazon, you should probably focus a little bit more on Amazon, right? And where people are not focusing, you should focus on.
Mhm.
And in the makeup kind of skincare space, people were not really focusing on online, and they got the chance to build out like this massive advantage in the online sector. And I'll just give you like the high level how people should think about it technology wise, right?
Yeah.
If you go on like estaladder.com or loyal.com, there's like thousands of products, and like you have no idea which ones to pick. Right? And, like, if you go into Sephora, you're actually gonna get walked through the products. So you're like, "I'm looking for a foundation." They're like, "Here are the foundations.
Yeah.
Here's what might be good for you." So if you think about that gap, right? If I'm a normal, like, woman trying to find makeup, that's a huge gap. Like, I'm really not gonna purchase from Estée Lauder. I'm gonna purchase from Sephora. And so you can probably imagine there's a lot of optimizations you can do using technology to close that gap, to
To
make sure that
basically simulate that experience. Yeah.
simulated. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's the exact same, but they're definitely way better at it than any of the larger companies and probably like most of the challengers, right? So, I think that's where they focused on and that's where they've really doubled down. Is like we're really, really good at selling online. We make sure that our experience is gonna be as close to a real store experience as possible. And they've really found that as advantage. I asked the people running the company, I was like, so like what makes this company different? Right? Like,
Yeah.
why are you guys winning? And I actually really liked their answer, which was, people ask that all the time, and you can give like a bunch of answers to it. There's a bunch of answers, like they have a bunch of contacts. They now like really good at different flows. But in
Mhm.
reality, what they told me is they think that they're like 2% better at that, than other people at like 50 different things. And when you add that up, that's actually a huge difference you can make. And
Yeah.
if you can keep that kind of culture, it's actually going to make a big difference. I've actually seen that. Like I've seen that they're like pretty relentless at different parts of what they do, and that's added up to be a significant advantage in the in the industry. And just a 30% difference in CACs, right, is gonna like make or break a business, right?
Oh,
30 increase in LTVs, make or break a business. So, you don't actually need to be that much better. You just need to like really compound wins.
yeah, that's super interesting, and I think it kinda, like, lends back like, I've written pretty extensively about, sort of, like, D2C companies and, like, venture capital and sort of, like, the evolution over the last, call it 12 years
Mhm,
of, like, why that made sense. At one point, it made sense. I honestly think it made sense. Like,
mhm,
back in, 2015, like, or pre-Shopify, pick your
mhm.
year, whatever, like, to get to sell online, like, was, like, a technical challenge,
Yeah,
and, like, you had to be a tech company, in order to actually do that. Like, some of the things, like, Casper Mattress was doing were, like,
yeah,
very innovative and, like, very cutting edge.
yeah,
And so everybody, like, dunks on the VCs for, like, putting money into direct to consumer, but it's like, at that time, like, they had full engineering staffs, and,
yeah,
like, if you could get somebody on subscription and you had, like, 80% gross margin and your CACs were $4,
yeah,
like, that model looks a lot like a software company. And then, like, eventually, the tech gets sort of productized by actual tech companies,
yeah.
and then, competition sort of erodes margins, and Facebook ends up taking away your money, and whatever else. But I think what you said is pretty interesting regarding Oddity, just because, like, it's effectively like a demonstration of, like, that actually working, where, like, you can
Mhm,
take, like, a tech first approach to this category,
mhm.
and if you do it right, you can be a pretty big and successful company. So that's a good insight.
I will also say this, which is like the lucky part is, like you were saying, your competitive advantage erodes when other people get the exact same advantages.
Right.
And so if there were other companies that had figured out how to do the like online shopping experience as well as Oddity and like really committed to it, then Oddity would slowly lose their competitive advantage. And so they're continuously trying to build new things, right? And so that's the other part of consumer, like we were talking about. Like any moat, you're probably eventually gonna lose it. Like, even my moats when I'm, like, coming up with new IP for my products, those only last 20 years, and technology improves pretty rapidly, so I should be
Right.
always worried somebody else can come up with something better, right? So, as an entrepreneur, your goal is just to, like, constantly push the envelope and figure out, like, how can you get more advantages that can hopefully differentiate what you do? Because, for example, if the online shopping experience, if there were, like, a SaaS company that could figure it out as well as them, then everybody else would just use it and they would have no advantage, and then all the cat
Yeah.
cats.
Well, and that's like you use the example of like the quiz funnel.
Yeah.
Like if Oddity, let's say they have like the best quiz funnel or whatever,
Mhm.
they could probably like spin that out and like be like a $50 million ARR, $100 million ARR like business for
Easily.
that.
Yeah.
But it's more valuable for them just to have it,
Yeah.
and help their distribution. Yeah. So that's like it's interesting because they may be the only folks who have truly I'd have to maybe do a little bit more research, but, like, who've really proven that whole concept and sort of, like, withstood,
Yeah.
the test of everything else that's sort
People
of
try to
caused.
copy them, right? Like, people try to there's tons of brands trying to do quiz funnel, but the thing is, like, they've had several years where they potentially the quiz funnel wasn't that good, and so they didn't have that much data, they weren't able to refine it, and so
Yeah.
if you're just going to spend, like, a few weeks or something, you're not gonna get amazing at it, and so that's maybe one of the other lessons is, like, when you feel like you have something to differentiate, you really have to double down and be the best in the world at it. Otherwise, you're not gonna have a real moat. So,
Yeah. I mean, especially when it comes to data, I'm sure that they've
yeah.
got the biggest training set and repository and
Yeah.
nobody yeah, that's the moat. That's the
Yeah.
moat.
The
Um,
Yeah.
okay, I wanna we haven't talked at all about packaging.
Yeah.
So I wanna dive into that. Tell us a little bit about, what you're working on now, the thesis. I think it's pretty sweet. It makes a ton of sense. Tell these guys what's going on with you now.
Yeah, of course. So, Packaging is a solution for like cat, dog, and dust allergies or indoor allergies. And
Mhm.
so, basically what causes these allergies are these small proteins that are emitted from the animal, or like the dust mites, called an allergen. And what we do is we design protein binders, so things that bind to other proteins that are also proteins. 9 out of the top 10 drugs in the world are protein binders. We took the same technology and we applied it to allergens. And then when it's bound, the allergen no longer, like, works in your body. It doesn't set off the allergic
Right.
reaction anymore. And then we, like, scale it up, like, giant vats. We put them into, like, spray bottles. You can spray your couches, spray your bed. We also have, like, a food topper that you can feed to your cat directly, so it's neutralizing the allergens in the cat's mouth. And, we sell D2C now. So, we've had a lot of fun kind of bringing this to people and, yeah, a lot of improvements coming, and, we're trying to innovate now new products, not just in the allergy space, but, a bunch of other broader spaces, and our hope is to launch new brands in the future.
Is there how do you, like, settle on the use case for this? Like,
Yeah.
do you think of the use case and then try to engineer a solution, or are you just looking for cool things and then wrapping, like, a use case around it? Because I think in the case of Ravella, it was the latter.
Yeah. Um, so for this one, my wife's allergic to our cat. So, I had, like, talked to her about, like,
So
"What?"
why not just solve it? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "There's gotta be better things." She was taking, like, antihistamines and other things, and I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
"There's gotta be, like, something we can do that's better than, like, just taking, like, things that suppress your."
It's so funny.
Um, so we the spray format, I think, just made sense for us because it was, like, quite frankly, the simplest to think about in terms of a regulatory perspective. It was also, it made sense in terms of, like, when people were gonna use it. And so,
Yeah.
for us, we had done some research, and I think it's, like, 20 million households in the United States have someone that's allergic to their cat and also a cat in the
Oh,
household. And we were thinking, like, so what are the best ways to use this? And we were like, "You can either feed it to the cat or you can just, like, spray areas and make sure that not everybody's, like, taking it up," because it is pretty expensive to produce, so we don't want, like we don't wanna spray everywhere. The other
yeah.
main modality you can do is, like a like for how they have, like, the air freshener things that, like, spit out some
Like the car things.
Yeah, that's right. Is
Yeah.
that, and we've been working on that, but that's like a little bit farther out. You can imagine there's like mechanical components to it.
Yeah.
There's limitations to our technology, as in like you can't have it mixed all the time. It has to be freshly mixed before you use it. So there are limitations to technology you have to build products around, and this just made sense as the.
Yeah, I guess it's kinda like it's almost like there's only so many things you could do,
That's right.
basically.
Yeah, it's like if I had technology for hair and I could just make a gummy out of it and I knew it was going to target the hair follicles, like of course,
Why don't you? Why
of
not?
course, like
You'd be the guy. You'd be the
right.
guy if you do the hair gummy.
Exactly. But unfortunately, like we are not good at targeting, right? So like we can't even target like our liver or our like kidney for drugs, right? That's very difficult for us to do.
Okay.
Liver is actually we're very good at because everything ends up in the liver, but everything else like you can't target
Yeah,
to.
true.
So you definitely can't do hair follicles, right? So there's going to be limitations to technology, and you just have to kind of.
Oh, which is, like, why it, like, has to be topical, I
Yeah,
guess?
it almost has to be topical because it's gonna go everywhere else. Yeah, it's there's
So
just
you could always just, like, lie.
yeah, I mean, that's one way to play it too, is, you could just, lie about the products. You
I I dude, I got into, like a weight loss, like, alt GLP-1,
Yeah,
like, funnel,
yeah,
and I was, like, scrolling through I think you and I were maybe talking about this
yeah,
at Beanstalk, yeah,
yeah,
and I was like, "This has to be, like, illegal," like, what these people are saying. They're like, Lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks, like, guaranteed." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, I don't know about
yeah.
that."
The thing about science is if you squint hard enough, you can make almost anything seem like it's useful for anything. And so most of these companies still there are these, like, universities. Usually it's not the best ones. It's like some other universities that like want to test out like random plant extracts. And so they'll test out random plant extracts for like any disease, right? And then if you test against like 50 diseases, there's like a high likelihood that at least two or three of those diseases you say that this plant extract is going to help with just by random chance. That's just how statistics
Yeah.
works, right? And so they'll publish that, and then the brands will actually take that result and they'll be like, this thing is solving like liver disease, and that's what they'll do with it. So it's just kind of how statistics works, and I think it's a little bit dishonest in terms of what you're doing.
And you can find I learned basically, like, some research
Yep,
publication that will support basically any claim.
that's right. If you
Um,
search like blank ingredient and hair loss, I guarantee you there's like probably one paper that's
yeah, yeah, and then yeah, there's at least one, and then you can just, like, use it in all your
yeah.
advertising.
Yeah, that's how science works. Like, there's like a saying in science you need like a p value of lower than zero point 0.5, meaning that if you did the experiment 20 times, you
Yep.
probably only see it happen one time. But it also means if you just do 20 experiments, you're gonna have one thing that works or does something. So you're testing like 20 plant extracts, you're probably gonna be able to find 20 use cases for those 20 plant extracts. Is what it is.
Yeah.
So
Alright, I mean, I got, one last closing question before we wrap it up here, we're pushing up on time. I feel like I might have already gotten the answer to this, but one thing that I'm kinda asking people at the end of the episodes is, like, what, like, drew you to consumer and, like, to get into consumer? Like, I know obviously we sort of touched on Ravella and, like, there was a technology there.
yeah.
Was it as simple as, like, we're just gonna make a hair care product? Or, like, was there anything that you had thought about before, anything deeper that, like, made you sort of appeal to to the industry?
Well, for the first company, it was simply people do not give like fresh PhD grads money for a biotech company. And so I almost needed like a different spin to it in order to
Okay.
raise money and like try to
Yeah,
grow the company. For the second company, I'll give you like, the real like kind of had a few years to think about it answer, which is
yeah,
consumers just fun, man. Like
yeah.
I've done some fun things in my life. I've done the gaming thing. I've done the
Uh,
science thing. Like being able to like see your product out in the real world, to like really talk to people about it, even the PR stuff, like talking to different people. That's a fun thing. It also, I think, quite frankly speaking, we saw this at Beanstalk. I think consumer has the best community of professionals, meaning like because it's so hard, and we were talking about how hard it is, like IPO
so
or
hard.
it's such a hard space. Everyone that I've ever met in consumer is like a nice person. Like they actually want to help, and maybe there's
Yeah.
exceptions like every once in a while, but
There's exceptions,
there's
yes.
exceptions, but most people they just, like, wanna help you, and they wanna see you succeed because they know how hard it is. It's like, we're all kinda built in the darkness, and so people are just willing to give advice and to, like, introduce you to people, and I have never experienced that before. Like,
Yeah.
academia is definitely not like that, like, science is not
No.
like that.
Yeah.
So, it's a cool industry to be in.
What a heartwarming end to our episode. Evan Zhao, everybody, thank you for joining us. Evan, thanks for your time.